If I get back 50 years ago, well, I was a young lieutenant in the Indian Navy, just promoted from a sub-lieutenant to a lieutenant. A 24-year lad, unmarried, full of life, and who enjoyed flying. Like I keep telling my wife, flying was my first love. I did, after my initial flying training with the Indian Air Force, I joined my squadron at Goa in 69 January. Delhi, 2 years after that, still 24 years young, I joined Vikrant, did my first deck landing in N69. I was a part of INS 315, Indian Naval Air Squadron 315, flying the Elysee aircraft. On board INS Vikrant, we also had the Seahawks, the Indian Naval Air Squadron 300, popularly known as White Tigers, and we from the Elysee Squadron known as Cobras. You can see my tie there of the Cobra Squadron. Well, coming to the subject, the problem of Bangladesh, the East Pakistan, started way back in 68, 69. With the substandard treatment that the East Pakistan got from the West Pakistan side, there were resentment, there were uprisings, and things were going bad. The West Pakistan tried to put all this thing down by use of military force. And the East Pakistani people had to take refuge in India. And the refugees increased manifold. It was becoming problematic for India to manage such a large number. India, yes, did look after all these refugees in the best possible manner. The then president, Srimati Indira Gandhi, approached the world leaders to do something about this situation. Unfortunately, no help was forthcoming from any quarters. And she knew the only solution to this problem is a military problem, a military solution. Called General Manekshaw and other chiefs of service staffs and all his advisors, and she recommended that we go into war. It was the month of April or May 71. General Manekshaw then advised her, "Madam, this is not the time to go into a war because we are just about to have the monsoon there, and East Pakistan would be flooded because there are plenty of rivers crisscrossing that country." Second point was that we need some time to prepare ourselves. And after, when Srimati Indira Gandhi got convinced, yes, what the general saying has got a substance, it was decided that we will go in for a military action sometime in October, November, if the need arises. All the service chiefs were told to prepare for the worst, that is a war towards November, December. Me, I was the youngest pilot in the squadron. We were based in Goa, and INS Vikrant, of my mothership, we called Vikrant as mother. She was in Bombay going through a refit. There was some problem with her boilers, which was being attended to. But ultimately, we decided that if we were to set the problem fully right, it may be a little too late. A decision was taken to patch her up and put her to sea with that bit of limitation, which we can tackle later. She sailed from Bombay in the month of July, and 1st of August, 71. The two squadrons of Seahawks and Elysees embarked the ship. We set course straight down south, around Colombo, Sri Lanka, and on to the eastern theatre, that is the Bay of Bengal. We went straight to then Madras. From there we went to Vizag. That is the first time an Eastern fleet was created. Till then, there was only Indian fleet. With INS Vikrant going over to the east and with the formation of the Eastern Fleet, we were about 6 capital ships and very many other smaller craft which formed the fleet. Our main task after reaching Madras was to top ourselves up with fuel, ammunition, ration, and carry out excessive war training. We were flying off Chennai with Meenambakam as our diversionary airfield. Day in and day out, we were practicing weaponry. We used to go occasionally to Vizag, come back to Chennai, go to Port Blair, come back to Chennai, Vizag, we were shuttling. When these things were happening, we were already in the month of November. Pakistan knew Vikrant was somewhere on the east coast. Where exactly, no one knew. They decided to sail PNS Ghazi, their only submarine with such large endurance, to east coast with the sole aim of sinking us, the INS Vikrant. Since she knew we were on the east coast, she came off Chennai. Then there were a lot of actions taken by Admiral Krishnan, who was the CNC of the command. He nominated a ship to act as if she is Vikrant, and she would originate a lot of signals trying to confuse the enemy. Sure enough, the bait which was laid was taken, and PNS Ghazi knew that Vikrant is indeed at Visakhapatnam. She approached Visakhapatnam, and right at the harbor bow, she met with her burial ground. It was a big shock as far as Pakistan is concerned, and we knew in our heart of heart there are no other submarine which could foul with us in Bay of Bengal at such large range. When this was happening, that INS, that the Pakistani submarine Ghazi got sunk, we were sitting in a harbor called Port Cornwallis at Andaman. This harbor, an isolated, unknown harbor, was not even known to many of us that such a harbor did exist. We were there in the harbor For almost about a week, our merchant ships sailed all the way, came into the harbor, topped us up with fuel, ration, and ammunition all ready for the war. By the 27th of November, the fleet had sailed out under the cover of darkness from Port Cornwallis, and we were heading towards Chittagong. We were nearly about 200 nautical miles outside Chittagong, and we were waiting for the action to commence. Sure enough, we heard on the third evening, there was a preemptive attack, and the orders came from higher-ups to go into war. Simultaneously, the blockade was declared. As you know, blockade is an act of war in which we declare to the world, so-and-so geographical area has been blockaded, and no ship is permitted to enter or leave the particular harbors which are blockaded. There were ships which initially tried to escape this blockade. Our main job, as far as the aircraft carrier was concerned, was to carry out a successful blockade. The Seahawks had their guns, the rockets, the 500 and 1,000-pound bombs, while the Elysee had the rockets, the depth charges, and also modified to carry bombs. The weather in the Eastern Theater was nice, except for the fact that there was hardly any wind. This did put a bit of restriction on the operation of Seahawks, because many a time they could not be launched with the full weapon load and to satisfy with half loads. Whereas the Elysee could fly with the full weapon load. Initially, we were about 250 miles, then we closed into 200 miles. The first attack from Vikrant was to Chittagong Harbor by 4 Seahawk aircraft. They came, they went, successfully attacked Chittagong Harbor and came back. Thereafter, the Elysees followed and did bombing of the Cox's Bazar runway. The next few days, there were a large number of short targets that we attacked. The airfields of Chittagong and Cox's Bazar, the ships at Chittagong, Chalna, Khulna, Meghna, etc. These are all the short targets that we attacked. But our main focus was on locating the ships that were trying to break the blockade. We had, that means the Elysee aircraft, which had a long range, and we were flying 24 hours. An aircraft was in the air at any given point in time. And we had our own radar and also ESM equipment with which we could detect the ships. We spotted almost about 10 ships. Some of them we warned over the radio and they stopped. Some of them we did fire some warning shots and made them stop. Some we even attacked. All those ships which were attacked or stopped were later taken as war booty and taken to Vizag for further handling. Initial few sorties that we flew absolutely at deck level. There was a time when my navigator used to tell me, Mohanan, be careful, your propeller may touch the water. We were that low. But as the days progressed, we knew there was no threat from the Pakistani Air Force, as the Pakistani airfields and of course the aircraft on the ground were all neutralized. Then we stepped up and we were comfortably flying at heights of 2,000, 3,000 feet, or sometimes even more than that, trying to increase our range of detection. I remember myself attacking a ship called Mini Labour, which was trying to break the blockade and not listening to our communications or the warning shots that we fired. I had myself taken a decision, of course with the permission of mother, to carry out a bomb attack. Initially, though I did aim to hit the ship, when I saw the sailors, the crew of the ship, standing on the forecastle and waving white flag, I changed my mind. My aim was not to sink the ship or kill those people, but the aim was to stop the ship. So I changed my point of aim to about 15 meters astern of the ship and released my 500-pound bomb. A huge explosion took place. I thought my aircraft is also gone along with the explosion. But it was not so. I handled the aircraft and found the aircraft is totally safe. The bomb had exploded about 10 meters astern of the ship. And subsequently, we realized when the boarding party went there that the propeller of the ship had damaged and the engine room had flooded and the crew has deserted the ship. The ship was also taken over as war booty. This is one operation where the Army, Navy, and the Air Force worked in close unison. We had our targets, our area of operations so well defined that in this whole war, which was being fought from all directions, there was no single attack to own units from our own aircraft or ship. It was a very well coordinated attack. We had been flying and carrying out this operation. We had also some ships which were also supporting the blockade, where they were patrolling the peripheral areas, whereas the main area around the harbors were being guarded by Vikrant and its supporting ships. We also had an occasion where we attacked some gunboats of the Pakistan off Pusur. One such gunboats was attacked by an Elise aircraft, captained by then Lieutenant Commander Ramsagar, later Rear Admiral. He was shot up. He lost all his communication. He lost all his hydraulics. I was immediately launched and went into the same direction, escorted him back to the carrier. Another important aspect which came was the news about US 7th Fleet trying to interfere in our area of operations. The 7th Fleet was then somewhere off Malacca Strait, and we knew anytime they would enter Bay of Bengal. There were many Elise sorties launched from Vikrant trying to locate the US 7th Fleet. I myself had flown about 2 sorties trying to search for the 7th Fleet. The 7th Fleet was nowhere in our area of operations. There was no contact made with the 7th Fleet either on radar or on our ESM equipment. After carrying out the search for 3 consecutive days, we called off that search. It was reliably learned that the US 7th Fleet, after crossing Malacca Strait and entered Bay of Bengal, turned towards the south, went around Sri Lanka, and went towards the Gulf. That's the story of the 7th Fleet. We also carried out a lot of photo reconnaissance of the various beaches in East Pakistan, particularly between Cox's Bazar and Chittagong, with an intention of an amphibious landing. These photographs were also passed on to the amphibious forces, which helped them later in doing a successful beaching so that they could link up with the other forces which are on the 3 sides. Here was an operation where the 3 sides of the then East Pakistan was surrounded by the Army, Indian Army, and the Indian Air Force. And for them, this communication was totally lost. Nothing could come from the 3 sides because it was all landlocked with India. And the only route for their escape or something to come in was from the Bay of Bengal, which was successfully launched, successfully stopped by our carrier task force. This single factor has made the East Pakistani military commander realize that their days are numbered. There is no way they could get any ration, any fuel all around them, where hostile forces, including the Mukti Bahini and the sea lines of communication, have been totally blocked. They knew if the war had continued for another few more days, the number of people, the number of casualties would have increased manifold. It was then the senior military leaders of the East Pakistan has decided that surrender will be the only option. Sure enough, after a 14-day war, a great surrender, I think one of the biggest after the Second World War, happened. 95,000 plus soldiers, sailors, and airmen laid down their arms in front of our military leaders. And as Captain Surinder Sethi has said, this was our grand victory and the birth of a new nation called Bangladesh. I'm indeed very happy that I could take part in this operation at that young an age. I served INS Vikrant in 3 capacity as a pilot on board the ship during the 71 war, as his gunnery officer, and later in 94-95 as its last operational captain. After retirement, when I settled in my house, I didn't have to think for a name for my new house. I named it Vikrant. Vikrant is in my blood, then, now, and will continue to be there forever. When Vikrant got converted as a museum for a few years, I was one of the happiest men. But for reasons best known to the higher-ups, she was sold as a scrap and she had to be removed from our scene. That was again my saddest day. I love Vikrant, I love Indian Navy, and I love my naval aviation. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.